The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts. Welcome to episode 180 of the Broadcasters Podcast. King of Podcasts here with you. And as I record this program, I will be on the road in Orlando, taking a brief little weekend getaway, vacation, taking some time to unplug. But I wanted to make sure to, in just true fashion of myself, I cannot just, as a podcaster, taking the name King of Podcasts, I don't like when anybody misses a week of programming, and I don't want to do that to all of you. So I'm making sure I keep up with my programming schedule that I normally keep up. So I have a wrestling show I'll probably have recorded the night before I leave, and then I will have this show ready to go, scheduled to go ahead and put out for all of you to go ahead and check out for this week's program here, week of the 25th of June. So I hope you enjoy that. And then I come back next week with another brand new episode, but some new content I'm going to put on here tonight to start off as we talk about radio tonight. We're going to focus on that and go through several different areas when it comes to radio and the evolution of radio and the issues that are going on today that I want to bring up that are of current interest. But really it comes down to, can radio reel back listeners and advertisers back from the digital disruption? Because there are a lot of underlying forces that are causing it. We're getting some reports as to how listeners and advertisers are responding back post-pandemic. And we're also looking at Facebook coming in right now to go ahead and put their mark as to what Clubhouse has done, as to what Apple Radio has done, as to what other resources have done to go ahead and continue to whittle away at radio's dominance that they've had in the continued decline that they've had for a long time since the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which, you know, about 3 weeks ago, I talked about that extensively here on the program. And I know a lot of people responded to that really well, and I really appreciate you checking out the program for that. Plus, a lot of rumbling about the local Radio Freedom Act. We're going to talk about that briefly here. But then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to play back some interviews, some choice clips of interviews that I've done with 3 previous radio veterans that have been on radio for extensive amount of time, and I wanted to go and talk to them about various issues. So I will go ahead and bring back interviews with the morning mayor, Dave Pratt, who worked with Nexstar Radio Networks, and he was previously best known for his run at KUPD-FM in Phoenix, Arizona, as the morning mayor. Also talked to Jimmy Rodriguez, who runs the J-Rod Concerts podcast, and had a very great stint at a very popular time at WHYI Y100 in Miami, Florida. And then I go ahead and talk with Sal Peasy Puglieris, who hosts the To Be Blunt with Peasy podcast, who is a veteran radio host in the Northeast United States. We'll go ahead and play some of those clips back for all of you here on the program so we can follow back up. In the meantime, let's go ahead and move along into some current news that's going on right now when it comes to radio. Well, let's go to radio's personal people meter holding audience returns will advertisers. Adam Jacobson over at Radio Business Report talks about this and says about how Nielsen Audio, back in May 2020, they released the April 20 ratings report for the Miami-Fort Lauderdale market, along with the station QM data. The numbers were ugly. Between February and April, the portable people meter saw its QM slide from 1.038 million to 536,100 for their top-rated station. And there were huge QM dips for every station in the top 10 by QM, and it wasn't the only market experiencing the pandemic-fueled slide in radio consumption. And today, Nielsen Audio suggests radio's return to pre-pandemic audience levels is nearly complete. The remaining challenge is recouping lost advertising dollars. Interesting point to bring on here about where they're coming from and where they're dealing with right now. Can they make their way back out from where they're coming from? And I don't know if there's anything that says that it can be, if it's possible. So let's talk about the actual numbers about listening. U.S. weekly radio listening is back up, not yet to pre-pandemic levels. This is a few weeks ago from Radio World. They said that as America continues to reopen, consumers are returning to the radio in numbers not seen in over half a year. And that U.S. radio's average quarter-hour audience in April was back to where it was in November, though again, not yet back to pre-COVID levels. And that from a weekly reach perspective, the radio audience in April is 14% larger than the same from a year ago, and the average quarter-hour audience is 31% larger. The question is, as advertisers, will they come back? When they already know for the last year, they've had to go to other places to continue to advertise. Plus, the market for those stations, the amount of advertising dollars are not being considered because we don't have an election year. So all the political ads that can be considered at the end of the year are not available. And ad rep firms that already put out content for radio stations and they already pay ahead of time, they're also worrying about putting their content towards podcasting. Just recently, Voxnest, or that owns Spreaker, which was purchased by iHeartMedia. On this program, you might notice the advertising right now, the dynamically inserted ads have changed here as of late. Now we have something different altogether. And I don't know what happened, but now the advertisers we have are much more local based, and maybe they're not as good, and they're not so ad rep firm as before, where they're national ads. It's changed because iHeartMedia is trying to do whatever they can to take inventory for their advertising and get it out there. So they're trying to do whatever they can to make that possible. But there are a number of factors that are now dealing with radio as we speak that is going to disrupt radio once more thanks to the digital disruption. Case in point, Mark Zuckerberg hosting a live test of live audio rooms in the United States. Facebook announced a new slew of audio products. We talked about the Clubhouse clone. It's called Live Audio Rooms, available across Facebook and Messenger. And Facebook is in publicly testing the audio rooms feature in Taiwan with public figures. But now they did a first public test with Mark Zuckerberg. And they put it together, see how it worked out. The creators used their time in the audio room to talk more about their gaming journeys when Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, head of the app Fiji Simo, and 3 gaming creators, and the Facebook Reality Labs head were all in a talk together to talk about their gaming journeys, what kind of games they were streaming, and other gaming-related matters. Now, with that said, let's talk more about what they did with the new rooms. So they're already out here. I already saw it now on my app, on my phone, so it's there for people to go and try out for themselves. So now the host can link up, and the other thing too, by the way, not just audio. Now, on Facebook, you can now post your podcasts. As of June 22nd, there'll be a feature that will allow listeners to create clips from their favorite shows. According to an email sent to podcast page owners and viewers and viewed by TheVerge.com, hosts can link their show's RSS feed up to Facebook, which then would automatically generate news feed posts for all episodes published moving forward. These episodes would show up on a podcast tab that does not appear to be live yet, but the company teased in a wider announcement about audio initiatives in April. And Pod News reported earlier this month, Facebook confirmed with The Verge that a limited number of page owners will have access. Emails are still being sent to additional page owners, suggesting the rollout might be wider than originally expected. So if that happens, then I already know that my wrestling podcast, which I already have a Facebook page for, and my King of Podcasts Facebook page will feature the Broadcasters podcast. I will post those up there pretty quickly to take advantage of the audience. Why not? New place to put podcasts. Can Facebook be a player? That remains to be seen. One of the stories I want to talk about before we go into our radio evolution, the evolution of radio with our radio veterans that we talked to over the last year or so here on the program. The Local Radio Freedom Act. People are talking about this right now. It's a non-binding bill with bipartisan support. More currently, we have several representatives, Republican and Democrat, that have introduced the bill to the 117th Congress on May 4th, 2021. The resolution states that Congress should not impose any performance fee, tax, or royalty, or any other charge relating to the public performance of sound recordings on a local radio station for broadcast sound recordings over the air or on any business for such public performance of sound recordings. The idea is to protect local radio stations from performance royalties. If royalties are instituted, corporate radio claims it would hinder their ability to operate effectively or even operate at all. Well, local radio might be heard of this. It should be based on the ownership and the control of stations, honestly, or actually based on the coverage of their stations, because local radio stations don't have the highest wattage stations. So for the highest covering stations based on Class A, Class B licenses, Class C, maybe we tier those payments out. Maybe royalties are created on a tier system. On the biggest stations with the biggest billing, they have to go and take a cut. My thing is, if this causes the corporate radio entities that are already in debt to unload stations, this is good. And for the royalties that need to be paid to the musicians, I'm in support. If it means to reverse the issues of radio's past 25 years, then I want it to happen. Now, we could see things happening where more advertisements are brought on board, or, who knows what might happen, or removing certain music content out there altogether. So supporters include the National Association of Broadcasters. They say, Gordon Smith, the president of NAB, says, quote, every day local radio provides endless free entertainment for tens of millions of listeners, as well as free promotion for musical artists. But not with a control, Gordon. We already know that airplay is tightly controlled. It's managed. So just to say that doesn't make sense to me. The critics, the recording industry, is outspoken against the LRFA because it supports performance royalties, believes the radio stations are operating under a tax-exempt loophole. The Recording Academy claimed they are unfairly paid for radio stations broadcasting their work. Their defense aligns with the belief that musicians are constitutionally protected to be compensated for use of their property, their music. The Local Radio Freedom Act does not seek to change anything that's currently in place, but rather reaffirm that the Congress will never constitute royalties for broadcasters. Several bills have been proposed in the last decade, but have never passed. It has bipartisan support and would go through a committee before being sent to the House of Representatives. If the bill becomes a simple majority vote in the House and Senate, as well as back in the President, it will become law. So I'd prefer that the recording industry and the radio industry have to go ahead and attest to each other for this. The Music Modernization Act, the AM/FM Act, these are acts that have been brought on board to kind of take care of this kind of issue. So I'd like to see this not pass and make it through. I'd like to see royalties actually be instituted. And for radio to go and pay for local, because they have to. It's going to hurt the radio broadcasters, but if they do a tiered system where, it's just like they say, the top, 90, the top 3, 4, 5 companies that own 90% of the stations, they should take the tab. While radio altogether should do something more for the musicians, for the artists. Because then if they have to pay more, then they don't take the music for granted. That makes sense to me. Now, let's move along into my feature here, as we're going to go a little best of here on the Broadcasters Podcast, talking to several radio veterans and their perspective, along with mine. I'm quite vocal in these clips about radio's evolution here in the 21st century, since the millennium. Since the change in 1996. First off, we're going to go to the morning mayor, Dave Pratt. And with him, I talk about his entry into music, into the radio, and what led him to get out of his popular spot at the time of radio for many years, for 3 decades, over at KUPD in Phoenix, Arizona. Where you are in Phoenix, there is first of all, number one, that market has some great talent, and that has had some great radio for a long time over there. And honestly, I can go back and listen, for Kim Commander for 20 plus years, America's Digital Goddess. I used to remember that's a staple on weekends on any radio station that matters, basically, is that right there.
Yeah. Kim is so good. And the Data Doctors, also a national show that concentrates on digital, also from Arizona with Ken. So yeah, we're proud of that. And hey, you're in a great area too. South Florida has produced some unbelievable radio over the years. So you and I are both blessed.
Oh my God. I mean, if I had to name the names I had here, well, right off the bat, I mean, from Rick Shaw to Neil Rogers to Sonny Fox to, oh man, no, there was
there was a time we just had some fantastic radio here. I mean, just for a lot of different
Larry
areas.
Larry King, Bubba.
Yes.
I mean, South Florida, unbelievable.
Yeah, no. It was a lot of places like that. Like I'll go to air checks and I'll listen to some things over there, which I don't think I found any of your air checks out there. I was trying to look for some. It was a little hard to go and find, but I must say in those days that you came on the air. So let me just go and get a little bit of the background into your radio career prior to the network here. You spent 30 years at Phoenix's KUPD, which is a album-oriented rock station, real heritage rock station, if you will. 2 decades as the morning mayor, as declared by the Arizona Attorney General. And even KUPD at the time when you were there, it was praised as America's top rock station. And first of all, before you came into the business, I mean, I remember listening to a book on Audible, the book from Richard Neer about FM. So the story of all the progressive rock stations that came together prior to. So, the Tom Donahos and the Scott Muni's and all these people that were all beforehand. Talk to me about the rock radio market, because at that point, consultants like Lee Abrams and others started to infiltrate right there in 1980 when you showed up. Talk about the state of the market at that point.
Yeah. So as far as air checks and stuff like that, I'm a little bit different than most radio personalities, to where I've never considered radio to be the highlight of my career, although I've enjoyed it so much and I'm so grateful for it, and the living that it's giving my family still is always highly appreciated. But I've never considered it as the high point of my career. Therefore, I have never saved an air check. I don't have one air check on my show.
Wow.
I've never posted an air check. I don't save any awards at all. Typically over the years, when I received an award, we would have a funny show to where I would give the award to one of my listeners. And even when I would win an award, even the national awards, I would choose a listener to go with me, and they would accept it on my behalf, because I never really cared about that stuff too much. I was more into the art form and more into entertaining than I was nostalgia. But then, I don't know, about probably 2005 or something, they were going to put me into the Hall of Fame, and they said, Dave, we don't have anything. We don't have any photos. We have a ton of stories. We know you want a ton of all this stuff. They said, would you do something? And I said, sure, I'll write a book. So I did.
Right.
And it's all in the book, and I donated it all to charity. And that book will be refreshed on May 11th, and it will come out as an audio book, chapter by chapter, starting May 11th, with an update on it. And it has all the stories in there that you're talking about, all the programmers, all the research people that I worked with, early stuff like auditioning at MTV, hosting US festivals in San Bernardino. It has all those stories in there.
Now, I want to bring up the book in a little bit. The book, by the way, if you're looking for right now, is Behind the Mic, 30 Years in Radio. And like you said, updated it so far, and you're creating an audiobook version for it. So I want to bring that up in a few minutes. But I want to just get back. The original point I want to take out of this is that regardless of, the way you might perceive your career behind the mic, most importantly, I mean, it is the crux of what brought you to where you are now. I mean, because, the reputation comes with it. There's something to be said. I want to take this to a higher level, 30,000 above feet conversation, because of the fact that I look at the people that hosted radio to become something more. When I look at every damn game show host I've seen out there, they all have radio experience. So your best MCs all have radio experience, and they don't even bother to put people in front of the Oscars, the Academy Awards, the Emmys. For whatever reason, you don't see people being placed as MCs like that. They're taking some people from other areas, but for the most part, they were radio people, all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even actors and people that we know. I mean, going back, Bob Crane, Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah.
Radio personality from Los Angeles. Radio personalities first, and then they morphed into other types of media.
Because that theater of the mind, something to be said about what you're able to go and do after all that said and done. Gene Shepard, I always think about from WOR back in the day. That was an amazing story about him. About he wrote a Christmas Story, and that movies making royalties over royalties every year. But that I love, and the thing is, I love gimmicks like that. His was, you know about that one, about how he would tell people, if you're listening at night, turn your porch light on and keep it on all night. I thought that was fantastic. Little things like that were always like the cues, but it's like, you know what to do to engage your audience. And no matter what you do after that, you're always going to have the ire of people, because you're going to say, okay, what's the next thing this person's going to do? That's when I feel like you have that same direction.
Yeah, in this town, and we've been proud of that, it definitely had a stamp on this town. I'll give you a couple examples. I always went by the mayor. Because it's a longer story, but I've always gone by the mayor. And still today, when I go out around town, more people call me the mayor than they do Dave in Arizona. Everybody calls me the mayor. When my daughter was in kindergarten, her teacher was so disappointed because she had told her that the mayor was going to come and talk to the class. And when I got there, the teacher's like, "You're not the mayor, you're a radio guy." I'm like, everybody calls me the mayor. The other thing, stamp that I think it's really put on Arizona, is one of the big sayings that I did over the years. And it was real simple. I would say to the crowd, if you don't deserve it, and the crowd would chant back, who does? And I would bring on major concerts in Arizona over the years, from U2 Rattle and Hum to the Who at Sun Devil Stadium to Springsteen Born in the USA to the first Def Leppard tour to, I mean, you name it, right? All these concerts that I introduced over the years, I would end by saying, all right, so get ready for Motley Crue, because if you don't deserve it, and the crowd would just blow dry your hair. Who does? And it was so loud that all of these groups would say, Dave, what was that thing you said? How do I get the crowd to do that? And it was so funny teaching like lead singers of the Scorpions, or teaching Tim McGraw later in my country days how to do this. And then when they would get the reaction, they'd look over the side of the stage and smile, and they'd be so excited because they found a way to engage with the crowd. And it was just kind of a magical little saying. Well, even today, although they don't say my name with it, sometimes there'll be a sporting event in town, or a Fiesta Bowl, or a big event in town.
Yeah.
At the Fiesta Bowl parade, they said, here comes the University of Ohio State, marching band, the Ohio State Buckeyes marching band. Let's hear it for them. If they don't deserve it, and then everybody else, who does? That all started with my culture on the radio, and people still use that,
and that's what I'm talking
all
about.
the time.
That's what I'm talking about. What you were to Phoenix is what Bill Graham was to San Francisco, basically.
Well, I would never even put myself in the same breath with Bill Graham.
Hey, to be putting that kind of company's not that bad. Come on now.
Oh man, I'll take that all day long. But thank you very much. And I've just been really lucky to spend my entire career in the same city. I never wanted to leave. I did for a blink, and I came back within 2 weeks because I missed Phoenix so much. And all that's documented in the book. Been lucky to have offers from every city you can possibly imagine, and MTV and everybody else. And I never jumped because I love this city, and I always wanted to be that guy that's aligned with a city, and been able to see Phoenix grow. Keep in mind, when
it is a big
I
thing
started here, and
people from another market try to move over, just some of that has just not worked. I mean, when you were embedded someplace for so long, and people are familiar, it's just too bad that we just don't see that much. Where these days, I don't know if it makes much of a difference, but in the time you were doing the radio for 3 decades up into the 2000s, it's just everything has changed the way radio is. So it's just now survival. It's not even there's a choice anymore as a top radio personality. There's just nothing there, unless you can get syndicated, I guess.
The industry's changed so much, and so many great personalities have come through Phoenix. The original owner of KUPD, the station where I started, said, "Dave, I'll give you a contract if you can beat Jonathan Brandmeier."
Oh.
And I said,
I remember
wow.
He went there. Yeah. Oh, that's WLS fame. Who?
WLUP in Chicago.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
the Loop. That's right. I was thinking like Larry Lujack and all that stuff. But yeah, you're right.
He was here. He was here just before it. The owner said, and he was huge here. And I was a young guy. I was 19, just getting my teeth cut on a low-rated rock station at the time, out of a trailer in the middle of Guadalupe, Arizona. It was one of the lowest-rated stations in the market when I started on it. And the owner said, he kind of laughed, and he goes, "If you can beat Jonathan Brandmeier, I'll give you a contract."
Wow.
And about halfway through my first ratings book, thank God, Johnny took an offer to Chicago. And I laugh about it today. So I only competed against him for a half book. So we beat him that book, right?
Nice.
Because he wasn't there, though. If he would have been there, I have no doubt that he would have won that book.
Oh.
So I joked with him later on about it. I said, "Thank you so much for leaving Phoenix and opening the door." And he said, "No, you were up and coming." And it's just really been a pleasure over the years. What you're talking about with radio changing so much, and today it's really nothing, that is so true. Part of it is because radio programming, entertainment, and talent has gone down so far because it's just not the place to be anymore.
Nobody wants to go.
But a bigger part of it is technology. So my kids, and they aren't young. My oldest is 26.
Wow.
I would imagine that he can't even name a radio station. I doubt if any of my kids can even name.
It's hard to turn it on now.
I don't think they can even name
turn
one.
it on that much anymore.
So when you and I were really, cutting our chops in radio and loving it and listening to it, we had our favorite stations. We may have had a T-shirt, a bumper sticker, whatever we had. A personality would go out and do an appearance on the corner, and we'd show up to take a photo with them and say hello. Anymore, the younger generation, I challenge them to even name a station. They just don't care.
But as a radio fan and as a person that got to work in radio, that has worked in radio now, I took it for granted how good it was. And, it's obviously there's an involvement where that audience has gone. So there are places to be entertained, but it's just the format's changed. The technology disruption has changed every format there is of media. Music, movies, TV, and radio have come in completely disrupted from the internet. And now we're getting just to where the technology's gotten so well, the bandwidth has gotten so easy to put up whatever you want now. It's just grown so much. Let me go ask you a few more questions about music and radio in general. Just want to get through those real quick. So now you did make the switch over to a crosstown station. You got to work with CBS Radio for a while after you left KPD, and they offered you a lot of money to stay, but you went ahead and went along. You went on a station where Howard was on. So obviously if Howard's on that station, you were going to be okay at KZOM. This gun hat at that time, he was obviously still like super hot. And at that point, right in around the 2000s, and this is what always bothers me right now, that the whole rock is dead argument. Rock radio faded, and you smartly moved into country after that, KMLE, which is in the same cluster, which was a good thing. Now, you saw the writing on the wall. You saw rock changing. They always talk about Woodstock 99 as being one of the major factors, but more than that, what is it now that, I'm almost about the fact you got to hear things with instruments and not digital. Talk to me about the fact that when you switched over to country, you still get to hear what's kind of what rock was. It's like you're still hearing people with instruments, and it's like this guitar and it's drums, and it's like not anymore. And like alternative rock is so different now. So I don't even know what it is supposed to be anymore.
So when that transition happened, I was at KUPD for 20 years, and they had changed ownership. They went to a corporate ownership, and rock was changing for KUPD to these alternative bands. Instead of being fun and exciting and having a smile on their face and really enjoying the ride, you got a bunch of angry alternative people staring at their tennis shoes on stage, depressed, wearing a plaid shirt. It didn't do anything for me. It didn't resonate with me. Yeah. And at the same time, this corporate vanilla homogenized ownership was coming in to KUPD. So I told them, I said, guys, I'm going to find something else to do. Now, this is before I even had another job. I just said, guys, I'm out. And they said, well, where are you going? Somebody else making the offer? And I said, no, I just don't want to be here. I don't want to be with you. But I appreciate my time here, but I have no interest in this culture. So they were pretty shocked. And they said, well, write out the 6 months of your contract. And I said, of course, I've never walked on a contract in my life, never will.
Next up, I talk with Jimmy Rodriguez, host of the J-Rod Concerts podcast, where he tells you about his stint over at Y100 WHYI in Miami, Florida. And we talk about how personalities and music have changed considerably and what we have out there in terms of audience. And he gives his take on what he's gone through and his thoughts on it. And also the idea was also dance music was intertwined. I think at that point after Michael, I think that's when they started having the Club 100 stuff. Is that right? Was that right? Or was that
right.
later on?
That's right. Yeah. That was around that time.
So the thing was, but then again, that's what Y100's kind of stuck. They're one of the few stations that can still do that kind of thing. Attachment to the Ultra Dance Music Festival, attachment to the dance music scene, and to all the different venues and areas, things like that. It's had that, but I also feel like with Y100 now, it's kind of kept losing its identity. Like the one thing that always bothered me was they took the dolphin off the logo and they changed it to like a wine to the martini glass, and now it's it's just oh man, they just did some stuff that I didn't like, and also would change the station name a little bit, add the 0.7 at one point, then take it away. It's like it was always kind of tinkering with it, but it's the station survived. Do you like the way it is right now? I mean, even though it's some of the stations just don't have that. They sound like the same as anywhere else. Like most stations, like 100, you can hear that in any market, and it doesn't sound any different.
Yeah, exactly. I just, I mean, the industry has just changed so much, Jorge. Yeah. It's if there was little flexibility, and that was one of my inner complaints back then, if you will, is that there was very little flexibility with the song selection in a way. It was programming director. If you wanted to play, Gwen Stefani was hot at the time, so like her two singles you could but you couldn't come up with a B-side of her album. You had to play the whatever, like there was predetermined song list that you could kind of play with.
And they were very much into saying, okay, a song is going to play 100 to 110 times a week, so you're going to play it every 90 minutes. At that time, it was the overkill. It was really, they were doing so much with the commercial inventory because they were running commercials like crazy. It was the less is more time. Remember that? And then they changed it. They would put so many commercials back in. So they basically were self-destructing themselves by what they were doing. And they were just making enough reasons for something else. When it comes along, it was going to come along, and then radio was going to lose its spot. I feel like it's happened that way. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that, it's, honestly, I love Y100 and I love radio, and there's something still special about it, something romantic about it. But I feel like really we're approaching 2021 and things are just so different. I think that, people are really fragmented in what they like. If you like deep tribal house, you have a universe for you. If you like top 40, even if you like top 40, you don't even have to go to top 40 radio anymore.
No, and the one thing too, the market also doesn't match the area. The market, the radio does not match what the market represents at all. Mm-hmm. There is no rock music. There's a rock scene down there. Dance music, you have Revolution, which I'm sorry, in my opinion, listen, a great thing that this Italian owner decided to come in and buy a station and build the format. God bless him, but it doesn't fit what the current market is, because it kind of just, it will identify with the Ultra Music Festival, and then it will just kind of it'll just kind of do its own thing, but it doesn't really fit. And then the hip hop station, R&B station, there's still a foothold because Jerry Russian and the people there. There's some stations that still kind of have a little bit of identity left. That's why Hot 105 is still such a popular station.
Yeah.
When you have Easy,
Big 105 is still around and kicking. It's
man. But they've had some things where they also have struggled. Like for me, I'm a radiophile. I listened to radio when I was young, and you were the same way. But my thing is, personally, as a radio listener, I can't listen to radio anymore. It's unlistenable. And it's a lot of reasons why I have that. But I wanted to know, do you still feel like you consume radio like you did when you were interning, or has that kind of taken away?
No, absolutely not. It's between my podcast and if I'm not doing research or listening to new bands or new stuff from the labels or whatever, I'm listening to Sirius XM. basically, to answer your question. Satellite radio, I think, was also kind of a game changer for people that wanted to just kind of like put something in the background in their car or something and not have to deal with commercials. So yeah, I really don't listen to radio, like terrestrial radio anymore. So
one of the things that kind of interests me about stations like Y100, and then I want to get into your work in the music and concert scene and your photojournalistic work. So, but I just think for me, it's nice to go and talk to somebody that worked in radio.
Absolutely.
Just because here's the thing, I don't want to. I'm bashing the corporate system. The system that came in and decided to micromanage everything. But the honest truth is, there are some amazing people that work at these stations. I know that now, and I've worked with some of those before. And so I don't want to disparage. But the thing was, I left iHeartRadio or with Clear Channel in 2005, and I was there for a couple of years. But I knew I didn't want to stay. I didn't want the environment where they were going to pay the same paycheck. They were never going to bump up. If you were there as an intern, listen, they get their interns from Connecticut School of Broadcasting or some other places, and they just make their money how they do. Fine. They get a little bit of a payday for getting interns on to bring them on board. Wonderful. But, there's a lot of things that are still there the fun has been taken away. And they just...
and I don't blame it. I don't blame it on the stations. Like, they were just trying to survive. And then, of course, iHeartMedia, which is, now a huge conglomerate, it started consolidating everything, all the stations around the country.
Yep.
It kind of became like Live Nation of radio in a way, like where everything was like part of like a big systematic machine. So, everyone's pushing the new Harry Styles because then that pushes the merchandise, because then that pushes the tour, and then Live Nation gets involved, and it's like, it just became very mechanic, No,
and I get the model. Again, but they're just, in some ways, something like that to have all the resources in one, the ad rep firm, to have the live concert arm, to have the promotional arm, to have the iHeartRadio app, which is the one thing I think is the true positive that company has. And I still don't know how they're able to buy anything. Like, I don't know if you saw that VoxNest just got acquired by iHeartRadio. And like, these guys are still $6 billion in debt. And they just got out of bankruptcy. They're still not hitting that good on the stock market, getting their IPO back up. I don't know how they're able to keep doing this and how they're allowed to keep doing it. But for me, I'm waiting for the day when stations like this will not be allowed to continue to run at such a deficit, and they'll have to implode. They'll have to unload their stations so that local programmers will buy. But here's what I want to ask you. Hit radio stations like Y100 Miami, when you were working there, have changed a lot. We talked about, and I've talked about how the digital disruption from how music is no longer sold by physical units to almost exclusively streaming. Now, you said you listen to SiriusXM. I'm a Spotify guy, and it just... the Billboard charts are on there. When I want to be able to, and I'll talk about that in a moment, about the fact that, the virality, when the song is hot, to wait so long for a station like Y to play the song. Here's what I have now. Well, I'll explain it right now because actually it comes into my question. Because I've gone and I've actually prefaced a survey. There's a study from what I think was called the Radio Face. The idea was that it takes between 8 and 12 weeks for a song that makes the Billboard Hot 100 when the song is hot. And let me just say, back in the 80s and the 70s, Y100, they would play America Top 40 with Casey Kasem. And the chart they followed was the Billboard Hot 100. The songs they played were based mostly off of charts that were off the Billboard Hot 100. And they reported to Billboard their rotations of what they were doing, not media base, which is just some corporate conglomerate that Clear Channel owns or iHeartRadio owns, which is how it works. All of it works like that. Now, with that said, there are multiple hit music stations now in small markets because all the big stations, media base is the conglomerate. Program directors can't even talk to anybody right now. Music directors can't, they can have calls, but really they're not in charge. It's regional directors from either Atlanta or New York or what have you, and they control what stations play what. And they'll say, okay, Taylor Swift has a new song, we're going to put it right to the top. Ariana Grande has a new song, put it right to the top. Oh, we're going to put, The Baby and Roddy Ricch Rockstar? Oh, no, we're going to wait about 10 weeks. 8 to 12 weeks, we'll wait for that. The song Mood, if it gets enough time, it'll finally make it way up there. But that's what they do. They want to always say, oh, it's because we want to, only the established, the bona fide hits are the ones that make to the station. But now some of these stations, and I like this, is an enterprise move they talk about. So they're right now, there are a few small market stations that have started to concentrate on keeping the station, quote, as current as possible with what's happening in real time. More influenced by streaming and sales than the national charts, the media-based charts, as well as soliciting new picks from listeners. The old day, hey, take a phone call, have a request. I want to hear this new song. That's how it used to be. Now, Sean Ross with RadioInsight.com, he says this. He calls the intent a new streaming era paradigm. Now, in a market where Y100 has two other stations now, Power 96 for whatever reason, another station I love for years, they've lost their way. They're playing the same music as CBS and now Entercom owned. It's just, again, they're playing the same songs together. There's a lot of times you hear the same songs on the stations at the same time. They're just programmed that way. Yeah. And they're doing the same old format, the same old way. And the same thing goes for 97.3 hits, WFLC. They're all playing for the same small, shrinking listenership. What are these stations missing out that if you were working there, again, what were the things at Y100 that you saw going on that would make those stations relevant again? What are they doing wrong now?
Well,
regardless of the resources they have, the jocks, do you think it's the talent? Is it the music? What are some of the things you think stand out that could be quick fixes?
Well, I think that, and this goes all the way to many jocks, but there are some quality jocks out there that still do this. In my show, Mark Goodman from SiriusXM, he's the grade A of this. But you still have to give effort to listen to music. I believe that, right? If you go to the gym, or you have to go and put the effort, or read a book, you have to read the book, the hours. Music is the same. If you want to be on the cutting edge and have new sounds and just be on the lookout, you can't just put some backdrop, top 40 playlist, and expect to be discovering or reading new stuff. And disc jockeys used to take this very seriously. There still are some. I like to think that I do. I like to listen to 14, 13 hours a day of music, but because you have to. Because then when you get on the air, you can tell your audience, this is what's up, and this is why you should care.
I'll tell you what it is. One of the things I also work about, and they always try to talk about these radio industry types, personalities. Now, distinguishing factors for the people you got to work with when you were working at Y100, Kenny Walker has an amazing voice, and that's why that guy is doing so amazing. Well at the beach, rather.
Still the voice of the Miami Dolphins, too.
Correct. And the thing is, resonating a likable voice, a comfortable voice that sounded good, that knew what they were talking about with their music. When I hear now the people they have on, you're hearing young voices.
Yeah.
They're trying to resonate and say, okay, we're not going to bring the people that have those great sounding voices that sound good on the air. That has been a drop tradition. That's not even an accolade that you need to have anymore. So to have a good voice to sound on the air, to talk about the songs, and actually care about the music, nobody's doing that.
No.
I mean, God bless the young people that are actually coming on now that are doing it. But again, they sound young. They don't sound like they just sound like they're fans. Finally, let's go and wrap things up with Sal Peasy Pugliaris, the host and producer of To Be Blunt with Peasy, former radio veteran in the Northeast, Hartford, Connecticut in particular. And we go about some of the corporate barriers that are holding radio back from making a much needed return, specifically talking about some of our favorite people in radio, especially in rock radio, and where things have gone since, and why things are so tough to be in the radio environment that we have all grown to we want to be a part of.
Based off my broadcasting experience. I mean, I was at first, Howard Stern was a guy I listened to a boatload back in the day. Ever since he kind of moved to New York after Washington, D.C., I kind of got sucked into that. And because obviously it was different from anything that's ever been on the air.
It's funny where...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say with Howard, You got to hear him way before I did, because it wasn't until about 94, I want to say, that he got into Miami, and we finally started hearing him in the full syndication. And it was nice hearing him on the way to work. I was at a real shitty corporate job. I was working TV news local on the way to work, but at least hearing him at like 10 o'clock on the way to work, listening to the news and stuff like that was great. The only thing is, what happened to Howard? What happened to him now? Now he's about to apologize for damn blackface that he did, 30 years ago. But what? This is the thing with radio. I don't understand. Listen, serious. Good God bless him. He's like fucking Johnny Carson. Okay, he went over there. He's got his money. Good for him. Everybody's getting paid. But honestly, that guy, like last year, he goes on like CBS News Sunday Morning and all these other shows like The View, pushing his book, apologizing. He's pushed out. And I'm not trying to bash him. I like the guy. I respect everything he's done for this industry. What the fuck, man?
See, I'm going to look at this from a different point of view.
Yeah.
Because at first, I agree with you.
Yeah.
He's definitely 100% changed. But I think a lot of things happened in his life, especially around when he got sick.
Yeah.
And he thought he was going to die. And at that point, I think that between that scare, all the therapy he's been doing, and just kind of growing, I guess, I wouldn't say like it's for the worst, but he's evolved a little bit. It's definitely not the same shocking show that it used to be. It's not all ass and tits like it used to be.
Oh, I wasn't worried about that so much, but I also don't like the fact that there's been a lot of people that were on his show. He's castigated. He's cast off. I don't like that part. And honestly, look, after everything that happened with him, with Allison, he gets Beth in his life. I'm like, okay, you had that. You got pets. You got you got your kids that are still with you, spending time with you. You're still having a connection with them. They're all growing up and doing well. I don't get what there is to be unhappy about. And I know there's been parts of this before, but again, to apologize and to basically want to take back everything that made your career and the people that were the foundation to help build your career, I don't get why he went to where he went. I don't get that part.
I think a lot of that had to do with like the therapy he was doing. I'm pretty sure that kind of put him in a different point of mind, because obviously at first he was very much this like fuck everybody. He didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say that on your show.
Yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't. Obviously, Howard Stern gave zero shits and zero fucks when it came to anybody and anybody's feelings. He just did whatever the hell he wants. But I think now, he realized that he was doing that because he wanted to get attention so much, like so badly.
Oh, and then also trying to, forgiving people. Like Bill Maher, he had a whole fight with forever, and now they're buddy. Come on.
Oh, I know. He had him on his show like a couple months ago.
And I like Bill Maher. Don't get me wrong. I think, at least, I will say the one thing for Bill Maher, he's consistent. And he's not apologetic. And that's what I want from my radio people. But this is where we are. The good radio people are gone. I was a big fan of Tom Likas. I thought Tom Likas was great. And I didn't hear him a whole lot because they would just bring him into the market a little bit here and there, but it was an LA show. Wasn't fit for here, but he was on a Howard station. And everybody was living off of Howard. And I'll tell you, I've heard what your show's like. If you had yourself on like a rock station, something like that, and you followed Howard, either like a afternoon day or like an afternoon day part or like a nighttime show, you'd be kicking ass, because that format doesn't come around anymore. We have it here in West Palm where I'm at because it's based off of one show, The Love Doctors, which has been around forever, but it's not even close to what it was. But that show at its time in the 90s, it was a great time for those kind of programs. Music radio was lost. And I'll talk about that in a little bit.
That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to almost bring that style of radio back, because somewhere along the lines, all right, and now I'm going to get me go up. Somewhere along the lines, America got soft. Yeah. Okay. And that's why radio changed so much, and it's been for the worst.
It's the alpha male. I mean, the comedians that you have on, look, now you got Nick DiPaolo goes off and does his own show, and Bill Burr's off doing his own stuff. It's the kind of just that talk shit, sports bar, fucking drinking over beers kind of bullshit. That kind of almost like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia kind of vibe. You don't have that right now. Radio's lost all that. It's all gossip about Nicki Minaj or Cardi B or 6ix9ine or some other bullshit. And it is propaganda. It's the way they're putting together. It's taped. It's Like one guy one guy with his cast of characters that are all weak and spineless and horrible, like the Elvis Durans of the world, the Bobby Bones of the world. And then they prop these guys up and put them up everywhere. And goddamn Ryan Seacrest, they put him on everything. This guy's like falling apart, has a stroke in the middle of American Idol. That guy's falling apart. You're running some of the people to the ground. If you got some decent players, that's good. But they don't let anybody else on. Everybody they have on now has to be good looking. When the fuck did that come about? Every girl's got to be good looking on radio. I remember when you used to have a face for radio, and who was that guy in fucking Philadelphia? The guy used to compete against Howard. The Hawaiian shirts. That guy was always about that kind of stuff.
Oh God, yeah, I can't remember his name now. I know what you're talking about.
Oh, I know what his name. I gotta remember. I'll go look it up. But yeah, that was the kind of deal we used to have, and I don't know what happened, but we don't have that anymore.
No, radio used to be a faceless job. You know what I mean? Like it was just all about how you sounded.
Look at the people we had on that were radio people. They weren't good-looking people. None of them were.
No, even going back to Howard. I mean, look at that guy. It's like a toothpick with hair. It's ridiculous.
I mean, for a while he was able to pull that rock star kind of like. Listen, they made him look good on WOR. I'll admit that. And on the E show, it's funny. I'll tell you this too. I love, because here's one of the other things too. If not for Howard, the YouTube responder, the YouTube creator format that everybody does, us with microphones right here, that shit started with E. There was him doing that E show. If we didn't have that, nobody would follow this. But everybody young does this format with microphones. Not just because they sound good, but everybody has that radio look. So if people want radio, give them radio. But we're putting on podcasting now. And that's what you're doing with your show.
And that's exactly it. Like I don't even consider my show a podcast. All right. Yeah. It's so far out from a podcast. It's not even funny. I mean, we do the whole gimmick. Like it's literally set up like a morning radio show. We even got it down to where we have sweepers and whatnot that we play during the show and whatnot. You know what I mean? And you don't see that a podcast.
No.
We were doing that since episode 1. I was getting at first I was getting local wrestlers to do little drops and I make sweepers out of them. And now I do get professional, voice guys that, and they do great work. But you don't hear that kind of stuff. And the format we do is not just two people where they just sit there and just bullshit about whatever comes to their mind for an hour.
Yeah.
It's very much formatted like a radio show. And I've had, a lot of experience in that, even working on morning shows for some of the top ones in the state.
So tell me about who you got to work with. Where were you working at? Because obviously, now, was it a radio cluster? Was it an iHeart? Was it an Intercom? Who did you work with?
It was Clear Channel.
I worked at Clear Channel. I worked in West Palm. Right. Yep.
So I worked at Clear Channel, Hartford. We had about 5 or 6 stations in there. We had Kiss 95.7, which was AC, top 40 type thing. We had 96.5. Which was kind of an all-around type station.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. 96.5 WTIC. And then we had Country, which was 92.5. We had Alternative, which was 104.1. And we had an ESPN Sports Radio in there, too.
Now, how long ago was that?
It was probably 2008.
Oh, you were after me. I was around 2002 to 2005 in West Palm. So we had Classic Rock the Gator. Cool 105 was our AC. We had Real Radio, which is the Love Doctors, the FM men's talk kind of deal. And, what else would we have? Oh, my God. Wild 95.5, that was top 40. And WJNO, WBZT were news stations. And I'll tell you what, at the time, I remember I still have a coin that says expect the best, which they didn't. Layoffs after layoffs each time. I saw people leaving. I'm like, why are you letting these people go? Gray wallpaper on the walls. The worst equipment and furniture possible for the programming department. Meanwhile, sales, pristine. Brand new cubicles. I don't know if it was like that in your cluster.
Let me tell you. So we had we were in a big building that's shaped like a candy cane.
Oh, wow.
We used to call it the candy cane, right? So it'd have windows that would go up and then it would go loop over and down. So when you're driving by it, it literally looks like a candy cane.
Wow.
So there were a few other places in that building, but we had a whole floor, which was the opening floor. You walk in, there's this huge open lobby with stairs going up. And then you have on the left side, you take a left and you be going to the studios. And on the right, it'd be sales. And the sales offices looked like you were in this luxury office. It was I'm telling you, marble floors and all kind of shit. It was wild. Yeah. And then you walk into the studios and you got a bland hall with a gray rug. and you got a bunch of doors that had like the station like name on them or whatever.
Right.
You know, because they each had their own little studio or set of studios. Some of them had 2, some of them had 1, whatever it might be. I think 95.7 had 3 or 4 actually in their cluster because they were like the biggest station that they had there at the time. Which I probably is still the case at the time right now, because 95.7 is probably like the 2nd or 3rd biggest station in Connecticut.
Yeah.
But it was kind of similar, like just like that. Like it's almost like they didn't take care of their talent.
No,
you know?
it was, but that's corporate for you. They will never ever take care of their talent. But it's the morale is so bad. But what's most important is I see people that have to go and make their way out. And I mean, all I can tell fellow radio brethren is get the fuck out right now. Or you know what? If you're going to stay the course, then hope and pray for an implosion, because I'm waiting for iHeart. Listen, if they had $20 billion in debt, we're able to go ahead and refinance, get their bankruptcy down, and get the Chapter 11. They're going to bring it down to 5.6. And let me tell you, I look at that stock price. They get their IPO back up. It's still shit. I don't know how that or any other company is going to survive. But there's got to be a point to be said, enough's enough. Pandemic is here. Pandemic's got to go and split all these guys up. And this is a testament to deregulation and all the bullshit that came of it. 1996. This is a pure cause of that. Clear Channel getting all the help from Bud Paxson and all these other motherfuckers just to get all this shit done, and they ruined it. Because I got into this space before it all happened, and it was great. And then all of a sudden, overnight implosion, overnight just destruction and decay.
The same thing happened with me, man. And I don't know. That's twice in maybe a decade now, because the way I looked at it, when I was there, everything was great. Yeah. And then one day they were like, they bombed and they had 1,500 people laid off.
Yeah.
It was huge. It was a huge hit to the whole entire Clear Channel Hartford. And I was actually one of the ones that didn't make it either. Like a lot of the DJs. Oh yeah. That's how I ended up leaving Clear Channel in the end. And the guy I was doing nights with, Skillet, who is now known as Brody in the Bay in Tampa. He's on like their number one.
Oh, WMTX. Yeah.
Yep. He's on the number one morning. Yep. Mix. Exactly. And me and him used to do nights from 6 to 10 or whatever it might be, every night throughout the week. And then after that, we go out and we do, on location. Yeah. After that. And that was like,
there's no nighttime shows. None. They can't have that anymore for whatever reason. I don't understand.
Pre-recorded now.
So, but and then you were a utility player, right? Like, so you did on air, you produced. What else did you do?
I
ran the board.
Obviously, everyone had to do that, especially coming as an intern when I started. Like, I came fresh out of broadcasting school right in the Clear Channel.
Yeah. So, now you moved along, and besides the podcasting, obviously you're trying to get the podcasting up till it'll actually, become that other revenue model. But I also see that you're doing work with RTF Sports. Tell me about that.
RTF Sports Network is they're a startup podcast network. Mm-hmm. They're very small right now, but they have a solid lineup of shows. And I know the guy who runs it, Mike, a great guy, and I kind of just been helping him do like the behind the scenes stuff. That's like the whole thing for me is like I enjoy that stuff, so I like going through and be like, hey, this show's great, this show sucks, you guys got to change this, you should change this, and I have the experience that nobody else there has. But they have a lot of cool stuff going on. They have a Roku channel we're working on getting, and they're in talks with a dedicated video, so that's going to be nice. And then they have from what I'm understanding, an XM radio. They're in talks to get like their own channel right now. I'm serious.
Well, they're going to go head to head with like El Presidente and Barstool Sports. But by the way, when did that all of a sudden overnight? The Call Her Daddy podcast was number one on Apple for a while, and then that imploded, whichever reason. But sports, and the thing is, it's not sports anymore. Like, you know what? There is something to be said about. Put it like this too. The one show I think about that is it's supposed to be a sports show and it's not, and it kind of has that feeling of what the Howard type show was. Dan Le Batard. Yeah, he fits that exactly like that. Or down here, I don't know if you ever heard. Well, that's the one. Let me tell you like this. In Miami, not too far from where I'm at, because I could listen to Miami stations from here. We were blessed with talent. Jesus Christ, man. WIOD at the time. Let me tell you the lineup we had at this fucking station. It was on AM, by the way. So, okay, we had Neil Rogers, who's fucking was a legend down here. I don't know if you ever heard him.
I heard of the name. Yep.
That guy almost went to Howard. Howard loved him. Actually talked about it on air. It's like, and he actually offered him to go to 101. And we had Phil Hendry down here. Phil Hendry was great.
Yeah, and, you guys, that's already a solid starting.
And fucking Randy Rhodes.
Rhodes.
We had Randy Rhodes down here too. She was great. And that was before she was political. She was awesome. Because she was a rock DJ before. She was a rock DJ at WSHE. And then she got the AM. And she was great. Like, that was the lineup we had. And I'll tell you, and the thing was, I can't, Neil Rogers, because of him, there's just something about, I can't call Dan Le Batard that. I have to call him Dan LeBastard because that's what Neil Rogers called him. And there was just great radio those days. And I mean, they were bringing in so much fucking money. That's what radio was. You know, and we'll never get those. I don't know if we'll ever get those kind of days, but that's what podcasting's become. And
it's true. But
everybody's gone there.
Now.
Yeah,
everybody's doing it now. But like for me, like I would still love to take my show and put it on radio.
Oh, if we could have a multicast, exactly.
That's still my goal throughout all this is to be on radio again somehow.
But you know what? iHeartRadio is going to still fuck it up because I'll tell you what. Okay, so Bob Pittman, the CEO. Who has just been the puppet that's been there while the equity fund vultures have been just tearing apart the carcass that was Clear Channel and all those great stations, legendary stations. Not too long ago, I've been on YouTube talking about the fact he calls podcasting radio's birthright. So he thinks he's going to come in and bring in radio and just start buying stuff off and thinks he's just going to be like some big deal, like he knows anything. And I love the fact he comes on here. Plus, he had a station that he picked up out of Western Pennsylvania, some AM station. They created an all podcast format with all the How Stuff Works podcasts.
This is the new wave now.
But they don't know how to program it yet. They don't know you take the ads out. You have to stop with this ad model, the less is more format. That bullshit. These horrible creative ideas that these corporate suits have. Once they learn that, podcasting should go to radio. It should actually go back on the way back and take those radio stations, put their content over there, and make something of it. That's what I want to see.
Here's the problem with me, though. Like for me, like my show, the options are kind of shit right now, especially with the fact that there really is no more rock stations.
No, and I'll tell you, that's been the biggest one of the detriments. I want to bring up all that. Let me go into my questions because I want to get into some industry related stuff. Sure. But really, this show is about the media industry in general, and radio is one of my things because I lived it. And so when I get a chance to talk to some great people, I was talking an hour and a half with Dave Pratt. The station he worked on was KUPD, #1 rated show for 30 years.
Wow,
was around for all of it. Met everybody, and you know what he said? The one thing about rock was like, when rock went dead, he said, they all went to country, they all moved to Nashville, and that's true. That's where all the guitars are. That's where all the instruments are. And everything else. I'm not looking for Imagine Dragons or, fucking 21 Pilots or something. Like, come on. Educational Foundation, so EFF, I forget what it's called. The K-Love format. That's like everywhere. And they're buying all the big stations. It's horrible.
Terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
So, all right. I want to ask you first about the corporate barriers that are holding back from making a needed return. Because this is my deal. Because right now, everybody's talking about, all the systemic, institutional, they want to call it racist, I call it class, I call it, status. The thing is, if you want to have people have a voice for the voices, that's what radio is. Radio is like a wasteland right now that could be used for something good. And before I make some points I want to talk on, do you listen to radio at all now, today? And is there anything that's any redeeming value right now that you enjoy? Or do you feel like it's just at the moment right now, there's just no value to it at all?
It's honestly, there's like maybe, at least in like this area, there's like one good show. But like listening to radio in general, like the stations aren't even that good anymore. There's nothing like they used to be, not even 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like it's all changed completely, and it seems to have happened so quickly.
Thank you so much for listening to the program, and I hope you can appreciate where I'm coming from with radio. I also recommend, please go ahead and check out all those interviews that I've done here on the program. I really appreciate all of you checking those out and hearing the real full breadth of all those conversations, because there was so much to be said between Dave, Jamie, and Sal that I put out here on the program.
I'll go ahead and make sure to go and just check those out, whether it's on the YouTube channel or right here on the feed. Go ahead and look back for those onto the archives for those episodes and check those out for yourselves. We'll be back next week. I'll be back from vacation by then. And until next week, remember the content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.